Okay, let's do another problem from beginning to end. So here we have a survey of 510 adults. So that's my N, right? That's my sample size. And they were asked if the death penalty was applied fairly. So 58% said fairly, 36% responded unfairly, and 7% responded don't know. So we want to construct a confidence interval for the population proportion that would reply fairly. Now, that tells me, right? I'm looking at people who would reply fairly. I've got a lot of percentages in here, but because we're interested in the fairly group, this is what I want to use for my p hat. So my p hat is going to be 0.58 because I'm focused on those people who replied fairly. Now, from here, I want to find the standard error, right? That's where I've got to start in most of these problems. So the standard error of p hat in this case is the square root of 0.58 times 1 minus 0.58, which is 0.42, divided by the sample size, which is 510. And we plunk this into our calculator and we get 0.022. Now, before we go on to construct the confidence interval, let's check our conditions. So over to the side here, I'm going to check my conditions to make a confidence interval. The first condition is that my population needs to be bigger than 10 times the sample size. So the sample size is 510. So is the population it doesn't really say what we're looking at, but like there are very, very few populations that are smaller than 5,000. Even if I was just looking at the population of Saratoga, it is bigger than 5,000. The population of students at West Valley is bigger than 5,000. So unless we're talking about a really strange population, this one's probably met. We do need to know that our sample is random and independent. And they actually don't tell us that, right? So we would have to check that in this survey, the data was collected in a way where we know our data is not going to be biased. So that one we don't know. We would have to do a little investigating. Now, the last two, we need to make sure there are at least 10 successes and at least 10 failures. So we would do n times p for successes. So that's 510 times 0.58. That number is definitely bigger than or equal to 10. Then we also do n times 1 minus p, which is 510 times 0.42, which is also definitely bigger than or equal to 10. So we've met all of the conditions to find a confidence interval here. Now, they don't tell us what level of confidence, right? They just say construct a confidence interval. And this is a really important point, is that the default level is 95%. Okay, that's sort of like the go-to. So if you're not given a specific confidence level, you can use 95%. So let's make a 95% confidence interval. So I'm going to have p hat plus or minus 1.96, because I'm doing a 95% confidence interval, times the standard error, which we just figured out is 0.022. And so when I put this into my graphing calculator, I get two numbers. So the lower number is 0.537, and the bigger number is 0.623. So now let's write a sentence explaining what that means. So I am 95% confident that between 53.7% and 62.3% of adults believe I misspelled believe, there's an extra E in there, believe the death penalty is applied fairly. Okay, in this next question, you're going to answer, if we were going to do a 90% confidence interval instead, is that interval going to be bigger, meaning wider, or smaller, meaning narrower?